You are sitting in your small apartment in Moscow, staring at the tea leaves in your cup, when you hear the sound that every Soviet citizen dreads more than death itself. It is the screech of tires on the pavement outside, followed by the heavy boots thumping up the stairs to your floor. It is 3 in the morning, the hour of the wolf, and the secret police have come to take you away into the darkness. You are not a criminal, a spy, or a traitor, but under Article 58 of the Penal Code. That does not matter in the slightest. You are arrested on suspicion of anti-Soviet agitation, blindfolded, and thrown into the back of a black van known as the Black Raven. As the van speeds through the empty streets, you realize that your life as a human being is over, and your existence as a subject of interrogation has just begun. The first method they use to break you is not physical pain, but the Conveyor, a psychological meat grinder that destroys your mind. You are shoved into an interrogation room where a fresh officer sits behind a desk, shouting questions at you under a blindingly bright lamp. He screams at you for hours, demanding that you confess to crimes you never committed, until his shift ends, and another officer immediately takes his place. This continues for days and nights without a single second of pause, creating a conveyor belt of fresh tormentors against one exhausted victim. You are not allowed to sleep, you are not allowed to sit, and if you close your eyes for even a moment, a guard kicks you awake. After 5 or 6 days of this, reality begins to fracture, and you start to hallucinate voices and see things that are not there. Your legs swell to twice their normal size because you have been standing for over 100 hours straight. The interrogators change every 8 hours, fresh and full of energy, while you slowly disintegrate into a trembling wreck of a human being. They know that sleep deprivation is more effective than the whip because it breaks the will to resist without leaving a single mark on your body. Eventually, you will sign anything they put in front of you, just to be allowed to close your burning eyes for 10 minutes. You confess to being a Japanese spy, a saboteur, or a plotter against the great leader Stalin, even if you have never left your village. The conveyor proves that every man has a breaking point, and the Soviet machine knows exactly how to find yours. The second method is the infamous standing cell, or the Kishka, which translates to the gut in Russian. You are thrown into a narrow stone closet that is only wide enough for you to stand upright, with no room to turn around or crouch down. You are forced to stand there for 10, 12, or even 20 hours at a time, sometimes with your knees pressed against the rough door. Your legs begin to swell as the blood pools in your ankles, turning them into painful elephantine stumps that throb with every heartbeat. If you collapse from exhaustion, the guards drag you out, beat you, and throw you back in until you agree to sign the confession. It is a torture of pure endurance, designed to make you wish for death just so you can lie down on a cold floor. Imagine the claustrophobia of being encased in stone, like a living statue, unable to shift your weight or stretch your cramping muscles. The darkness is absolute, and the silence is only broken by your own ragged breathing and the distant screams of other prisoners. You lose all sense of time, not knowing if you have been in there for an hour or a week. When they finally pull you out, your legs are often so atrophied and locked in position that you cannot walk and have to be dragged to the interrogation table. It is a method designed to make you feel like an animal, stripping away every last shred of your humanity and dignity. You are merely a piece of meat to be stored in a cupboard until you are ready to be processed. The third horror is the hot and cold treatment, a sensory assault that wrecks your body's ability to regulate itself. You are placed in a cell that is heated by a massive stove until the air is so hot and thick that you can barely breathe without scorching your lungs. You sweat profusely, your dehydration becomes critical, and your heart races like a trapped bird in your chest. Just as you think you are about to die of heat stroke, they drag you out and throw you naked into a freezing cell or out into the snow. The shock to your system is catastrophic, causing your blood vessels to constrict violently and your body to go into immediate hypothermia. They repeat this cycle over and over again until your will is shattered and you are ready to admit that you are a spy for England. This thermal torture destroys your immune system, leaving you vulnerable to pneumonia and tuberculosis within days. It is a calculated method that leaves no broken bones, but destroys the internal machinery of the victim. You are fighting a war against your own biology, and it is a war that you cannot possibly win. The sudden shift from 100 degrees to below freezing makes your teeth chatter so hard they might crack. Your skin turns gray and blue, and your mind retreats into a primitive state of survival, where only warmth matters. They offer you a blanket and a cup of hot tea if you sign the confession, a temptation that is almost impossible to resist. The fourth method is the bug pit, or the lice cell, a form of biological warfare waged against a single human being. You are thrown into a dark, damp dungeon that is intentionally infested with thousands of bedbugs, lice, and ticks. The moment the heavy iron door slams shut, you feel them crawling up your legs, dropping from the ceiling, and biting every inch of your exposed skin. You cannot sleep because the itching is a constant, maddening fire that consumes your entire body. In the darkness, you can hear the skittering of rats waiting for you to stop moving so they can take a bite. It is a degradation so profound that many prisoners lose their minds within 48 hours, screaming to be let out and ready to sign their own death warrants. They strip you of your clothes before throwing you in, leaving your soft flesh completely vulnerable to the swarm. You scratch until you bleed, opening wounds that immediately become infected in the filthy environment. The smell of the pit is a mixture of rot, excrement, and old blood that makes you retch uncontrollably. This method was particularly effective against intellectuals and those who prided themselves on cleanliness and order. To be reduced to a feeding ground for vermin is a humiliation that breaks the spirit faster than a beating. You realize that in the eyes of the state, you are lower than the insects that are eating you alive. The fifth method is the mock execution, a psychological terror that pushes you to the very brink of the abyss. You are dragged from your cell in the middle of the night and marched down a long corridor to a basement room with a drain in the floor. An officer pulls out his pistol, checks the chamber, and tells you to kneel down and face the wall. You feel the cold metal of the barrel against the back of your neck, and you squeeze your eyes shut, waiting for the end. The trigger clicks, but the gun is empty, and the officers burst into laughter at your terror. They drag you back to your cell, leaving you shaking and sobbing, knowing that next time the gun might be loaded. This process can be repeated multiple times, keeping you in a constant state of mortal fear. Your hair might turn white overnight from the stress, and your heart weakens with every click of the trigger. It is a game of Russian roulette where only the executioner knows the rules. Sometimes they fire a live round into the wall right next to your ear, deafening you and covering you in stone dust. The sheer relief of being alive is so overwhelming that you become pliable and grateful to your tormentors. It is a twisted form of psychological bonding, where you start to see the interrogator as the one who granted you life. The sixth method is the threat to family, which is often more effective than any physical pain they can inflict on you. The interrogator sits calmly at his desk and places a photo of your wife or your daughter in front of you. He tells you that if you do not confess, they will be arrested, sent to the camps, or placed in state orphanages for the children of enemies of the people. This breaks you faster than the whip because you can endure your own suffering, but you cannot endure the thought of your loved ones in this hell. You sign the paper, weeping, hoping to save them, but you never know that they often arrest them anyway. It is the ultimate betrayal, using your love and loyalty as a lever to destroy you. They might show you a forged letter from your spouse, claiming that they have renounced you and want a divorce. They tell you that your children have already forgotten your name, and are being raised as good Soviet citizens who hate you. This emotional isolation makes you feel that you have nothing left to lose but your own miserable life. The guilt of being the cause of your family's suffering is a burden that you will carry to your grave. You imagine your wife in the bug pit or your son in the standing cell, and it drives you to madness. You scream that you will sign anything, confess to anything, just to spare them from the machine. The seventh method is the swan dive, or the punishment cell in the camps themselves, known as the SHIZO. If you fail to meet your work quota in the gold mines of Kolyma, you are thrown into an unheated stone punishment cell in the dead of winter. You are given only 300 grams of bread a day and forced to sleep on a wooden plank with no blanket. To keep from freezing to death, you have to run in place or jump up and down all night long, exhausting your last reserves of energy. If you stop moving, the cold creeps into your bones, and you simply never wake up. It is a death sentence disguised as a disciplinary measure, a cold and quiet end to a life of suffering. The walls of the SHIZO are often covered in ice, and the floor is slick with frost. You are wearing nothing but thin cotton rags that offer zero protection against the minus 40-degree temperatures outside. You curl up into a ball, trying to preserve the last flickering flame of your body heat. Prisoners who survive the SHIZO often emerge with severe frostbite, losing toes and fingers to the black necrosis. They are broken men, physically and mentally, who know that they have stared into the face of death and blinked. The camp administration uses the threat of the SHIZO to force starving men to work harder in the mines. You must understand that the goal of the Gulag system was not just to punish, but to extract free labor and crush the human spirit. You were considered camp dust, a resource to be used up and blown away by the wind. The cruelty was systemic, built into the very architecture of the Soviet state. Imagine the sheer hopelessness of knowing that even if you survive the torture, your sentence is 10 or 25 years of hard labor. The interrogation was just the welcoming ceremony to a lifetime of misery in the frozen wastelands. You are a ghost in a machine that is designed to grind you down into nothingness. Alexander Solzhenitsyn and Varlam Shalamov wrote about these horrors so that the world would never forget the screams that echoed in those basements. It is a reminder that civilization is a thin veneer, and beneath it lies a capacity for cruelty that is truly bottomless. So, as you sit in your comfortable chair today, remember the millions who stood in the standing cells and froze in the SHIZO. Remember that their only crime was existing in a time and place where paranoia was the law of the land. And be grateful, be endlessly grateful, that you do not hear the sound of the black raven stopping outside your door tonight.